Elimelech and his family had travelled from afar, from God's land to Moab, to get away from the famine in God's land. Moab was a place of evil and idolatry, a place where no friend of God should ever be. But here is where Elimelech and his family met Ruth.
Well, I guess it was interesting to see a family from God's land come to us. I kind of liked them, warmed up to them, and well, one thing led to another.
Ruth was married to one of Elimelech's sons. Everything looked for a while as they started their life together. But unfortunately, things didn't last that way forever.
I couldn't believe it. They were gone. My husband, his father, his brother, just dead. And now it's just the three of us.
After the sudden death of Elimelech and his sons, Ruth, her mother-in-law Naomi and sister-in-law Orpah, well, they were left alone. They decided to return back to God's land. Following Naomi, the two young women were heading to a land that they'd never seen before.
I remember Naomi stopping. We were about halfway back, but she was angry. She'd lost it all. Go home, she told us both. But I couldn't. She couldn't provide for us. She was giving us a way out. Orpah went home, back to Moab, but I couldn't leave. She was the only family she had, the only family I had. And I knew there was something different about this family. No family is perfect, I mean, just look at mine. But there was something about God's family that I'd learnt and felt. God's family was something different, something I needed to see. I looked at her and said, I will not leave you. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God.
Back in God's land, all still wasn't quite right. Ruth and Naomi found that they had no money to feed themselves with. So all they could do was go to the fields and glean the food that the farmers had left to feed the poor. They needed help. And thankfully, God sent the right person at the right time.
Yeah, I remember when I first saw him. We all used to talk about him. The one who owned the field and allowed us to collect leftover food. That day he came and I saw him talking to his men. I'm not quite sure what he said, but they'd definitely been given instructions to help us. They started to leave more food and even drew me some water. Yeah, I remember that. That was the first time I saw Boaz.
Boaz was a wealthy man, but a very good man. He prospered in business, but he gave to the poor. More importantly for Naomi and Ruth, he was someone who knew their family and could save their family, save their homes and save their lives. All he had to do was marry Ruth. So Naomi hatched a plan and sent Ruth to go meet him. But the response that they got, well, that surprised them greatly.
Me, he said. Why would you want to be with me? There are younger, nicer men out there. He really did say that. And I guess he didn't realise how kind and caring he was. He told me he liked me, but he didn't think I'd give him a second chance. We made plans to wed. Naomi was so happy. I was so happy. We all were.
Their wedding was a wonderful occasion. Naomi's family was being rebuilt, and Ruth finally had a family to call her own. But their story wasn't over. Ruth and Boaz, well, they had a son called Obed. And then when Obed was old enough, he had a son called Jesse. And when Jesse was old enough, he had a son called David. And David grew up to become God's special king. A king who led people back to God, and a king who pointed to Jesus, who was still to come. Ruth had played a massive part in God's big story.
I'd often felt alone, like I didn't belong anywhere. I was the outsider, but God was always faithful. Now I'm ready to play my part in God's family, whatever part it is to play.